Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have this really beautiful purple, silver, and white A2 card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I always have my A2 bases already created, so I'm just going to make the panel and the mat here. And I cut about 1/4 of an inch off of HammerMill cardstock that I had already trimmed down to be the right size for a card front. And then for my silver mat, I'm going to cut it down to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my A2 base. So there's a thin amount of each layer kind of showing around the other layer. I like that look. You could add a bigger border of each layer if you wanted to, completely up to you. That's just kind of how I like to do it. I like to have really thin layers so that they're just kind of popping out behind each other. And then I always eyeball it and make sure that I like the look before I go into anything else. So I'm going to blend some Villainous potion onto this piece of HammerMill cardstock. And here you can see that it's not going on really well. Now, keep in mind that blending is always going to be the lightest application of ink, but you can see that I'm fighting a little bit to get the ink down. So this is where I realized that my ink needs to be re-inked. So I grabbed my re-inker, and I'm just showing you quickly how I like to do it. I know some people use like a squeegee or like a card and kind of try to even it out perfectly. I have never needed to do that. I found that just kind of trying to evenly distribute it across the whole pad works really well for me. But whatever works for you, obviously, is the best way for you to do it. As I'm just showing you how I like to do it in case you ever have any questions. So yeah, and then you can see how easily this ink is going down now. So I like to do a few passes, especially because this is going to be a solid colored cardstock. If you've been with me for a little while, you know that I don't have much solid cardstock in my collection. I don't use it very often, so I don't tend to purchase it. I only have it if it came in a kit that I've purchased of some kind, and I didn't have anything this really rich purple that I wanted. So the easiest thing for me to do was to just create my own. So I blended on my HammerMill cardstock panel, and then I had another piece of HammerMill cardstock here because this is what I'm going to die cut out. I also have the same silver cardstock I used as the mat. I'm going to die cut some leaves out of that, and a white piece of cardstock. It's just my plain HammerMill. I like to use HammerMill for pretty much everything. I think that's why it's my favorite go-to cardstock, because it works for blending, and it works for ink smooshing, and it works for alcohol Copic coloring, stuff like that. So it's kind of my go-to. But I have the Simon Says Stamp Etched Laurel leaves, I believe they're called. And you're going to see me struggle a little bit here. This is because I ran it through with my silver cardstock, and my silver cardstock's a little bit delicate. So I'm trying really hard to gently get this out without poking big holes in it and whatever. And I ended up having to not record it because I had to have it closer to my face. So you didn't really see me pop that out. I will show you getting it out of the purple cardstock, which is just my blended piece here, in a second. You see me trying that because I've seen Tim Holtz, he'll like smack the dye down on his glass mat, and sometimes he can get the dyes to come out. I haven't found that to be successful personally, but I figured I'd give it a try, right? And then here you can just see that I did get the end of the dye out, or the leaves out. So I just used my craft pick to kind of lift the rest of the cardstock away from the dye. This is a very intricate dye, which is why I'm using my chrome base plate. This die cuts these beautiful etchings into each leaf, which then for reasons I understand that my cardstock doesn't want to let go. So I just have to be a little more vigorous with getting these die cuts out. But usually they come out pretty easily. Like here, you're going to see this one came out fairly easily as well, because this is the same HammerMill cardstock. It's just the not blended piece. But my silver cardstock is a bit thinner than my HammerMill, so it did not really want to release. There is die release paper if that's something you want to try instead. This is just something I've found without having to purchase another product to use. Just something I found it works really well for me. And then I did want to test my panel because it was Distress Oxide ink, which you can emboss with. So I wanted to be really careful and make sure that my panel was completely dry before I went and stamped on it. And then I have a Misti, I believe this is a sticky mat or sticky grid mat that fits in the Misti, and then you can just adhere it. You can adhere your piece to it. So this allows you to stamp the whole way across without having to have magnets or anything in the way, because I want to do a background pattern across my panel. And the easiest, and yes, that is a spider running across my desk. I noticed it and then just ignored it because spiders don't bother me any, and it's a tiny little spider. If you didn't notice it, go back a few seconds and watch it. It runs across the white mat on my my Misti. But Anyway, so I am going to stamp this really cool Hero Arts. This is the String Dots Bold Prints background stamp. And everything I used is always linked and listed down below. You just have to open the description and then it'll tell you everything that I'm using. And then here you can see how beautifully that's stamped without me having to worry about magnets or trying to adhere the piece down. I just think that these sticky mats are pretty cool. And then I like to take the mat away from the cardstock so that I'm not bending the cardstock, I'm bending the mat. As long as you don't press it too hard, it won't crack or do anything weird. And then I'm going to cover it with some, this is clear embossing powder, because I want to create a difference in colors in the background, but I don't want to introduce a new color. I want this to just be that like really rich, pretty purple, white and silver. That's it. So I don't want to introduce any new colors. I just want to create color variation in the background. So that's why I chose to use clear. I mean, you could do white, but I didn't want white in the background because white is the last layer, and I kind of thought that would look really pretty. But you could do white. You could do silver too if you had it. A silver that could match the silver cardstock if you have it. That would look really pretty too. I just chose to do this different shade of purple because it felt like I was bringing more purple in when really I was just using the same purple, just adding some different color to it, if that makes kind of sense. So that's kind of what I chose to do. And then I'm going to adhere my layers together. I'm just using my Nuvo Deluxe glue. I like to be a little bit serious with my glue. I've had people ask me why I use so much glue before. And you know, it's kind of funny, right? Because you should use what you want to use. Like, you know, whatever amount of glue that makes you happy, that's what you should use. But for me personally, there's nothing worse than having a card arrive to somebody and have it fall apart because you didn't want to put a little extra glue on it, you know? So I'm kind of like, I'd rather use a bit of extra glue and be a bit like over the top with my glue than have my stuff not hold. And sometimes people will buy cards from me. They'll ask me if I have a card on hand, and I'll be like, yeah, I have these cards that are thank you cards or birthday cards or whatever. So if someone's purchasing something from me, I don't want to be concerned that it's going to fall apart when they send it to somebody else, right? So I figure you're just safe to use, you know, whatever makes you happy. And I have a tendency towards just being a little heavier handed with my glue. I figure that's better than having a project I've, you know, spent time creating fall apart. So that's kind of my thought process for it. So hopefully that answers the question. If you were ever wondering why I use as much glue as I do, that's why. And also, those are really thin nozzles. So, I mean, it looks like a lot of glue, but they're like thin lines of glue. So keep that in mind too. But again, you need to do whatever makes you happy in your crafting. This card, if you want to recreate it and you don't have Villainous Potion, you could definitely do this in a different colorway. I mean, any easily blendable ink would create a beautiful card with this. So, you know, or if you have colored cardstock that you think would look really pretty, use that. I just ink blended because I don't have a lot of colored cardstock. So, I mean, this is easily recreatable. You could definitely do the same kind of card and just add different colorways. Like you could do a rainbow of these cards if you wanted to. I don't think it's a too difficult card once you figure out your layout. And here you're going to see me struggle a little bit through this. I don't know why. I just, for whatever reason, these leaves every once in a while. I love this die. I love how detailed it is. I love how pretty it is. But sometimes I struggle to get a layout with them that I like. So here I'm just showing you that because sometimes I cut this out because I'm like, you guys don't want to watch me play with pieces. But I want you to know that if you struggle with layouts, you're not the only person, you know, like sometimes it takes me, you know, several times. That's why I like to cut out extra pieces. So that's why I cut out, you know, each leaf twice from each, like the 3 colors. And then I have options to play with. And sometimes I'll cut the leaves apart, which is what I ended up doing here because I didn't want this huge long leaf for the second one. I just wanted a little piece of the leaf, you know, so that I could add that in the front with this other little white leaf and kind of have it look a little bit more full. So play around with your pieces and don't be surprised if you're like struggling with your design. Totally normal, not a big deal. Just play around with it and sometimes walk away. I find that if I'm feeling a bit frustrated, I will walk away from the project and then try to get a clear head, grab a cup of tea or sleep. Sometimes I come back to it the next day if I'm really struggling, and then look at it with fresh eyes because sometimes you just need a moment away from the project if you're struggling along a little bit. And then because this layout took me so long to come up with, like that clip looks fast. Everything's sped up when I do my videos. That clip looked fast, but it did take me quite a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my layout. So instead of removing them and layering them, I'm actually just going to adhere them like I'm doing here. So you see me, instead of shifting anything, I'm just like lifting a leaf and adhering it. So until I have kind of the layout that I want, everything's pretty much adhered, then I'm going to bring in my sentiment, that little thanks strip you saw me cut out. Those are sentiment strips from Simon Says Stamp. I have a bunch of them because they've come in the kits. So I just have them sitting in a little pouch together, and then I go through and find ones that I think are fitting for what I want to do. You guys know that thank you cards and happy birthday cards are kind of my most needed cards. So that is generally what I prefer to do. And then here I thought that I had left room on that leaf, and I did. I just needed my reverse tweezers to kind of create that space, and I like it kind of just coming out behind that leaf. It just looks more like it's a part of the design that way. So that's kind of something I like to do, just kind of tuck it in a little bit. I think I just hit my mic. I'm sorry, guys. I also forgot to mention that I did let my Oxide ink, once I re-inked it, sit for about 10 minutes before I started blending with it, just to make sure that that ink had fully kind of seeped into the foam pad on top. Mine was fairly dry. You saw it like seep in right away. So you probably would have been okay to blend right away, but I did leave it for a little bit and then came back to it just to make sure that I wasn't going to just saturate all that ink onto my blending tool or my blending foam. And then I'm going to create a bow. Now, if you've been with me for a minute, you know that I struggle to make bows. Don't ask me why. It's not that hard. Don't worry. I can tie my shoes. So I don't know why I have a heck of a time doing it when I'm like trying to record, but I don't know if it's like camera fear or something, like, oh, somebody's gonna make fun of me and my bow here because it takes me 6 years to make. But I got my bow. I just have been cutting the string a little bit longer. I think that was my biggest issue, is that I'd cut my string super short trying to save some string and then have a really hard time to create the bow. So now I just cut a longer string, and I do end up wasting a little bit of it, or I try to add it to other projects later if it's not too short. But now I'm just, I'm kind of like, you know what? It's okay to waste a little bit of the string to actually be able to tie your bow and not get mad. Like, it's string. I don't want to get mad at it. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it comes between like using your products and not wasting them and not like getting mad because you've made it too short and you can't use it properly. Like, it's one of those kind of funny things that I struggle with sometimes. So I did adhere down that little bow, and then I cut off the extra string that was just hanging off. I did make sure that it fit within the card so that I didn't have any concerns with it trying to go in an envelope. And then I brought in some silver satin pearls because I thought that they would look really pretty. You don't need the pearls. You guys know that I love to add embellishments. It's probably one of my favorite things in our crafting industry. I love embellishments, especially the pearls, so much. So I did kind of add them throughout the design just for something a little bit extra. And then my string also has a piece of silver foiled thread running through it. And then I took the leftovers of the leaves that I cut apart and put them on the inside because I figured, why not? Let's use them up. And that is the card I created for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll consider leaving me a comment and tell me what you think of it. I love it because I love purple, but like I said, you could do this in any colorway and it would still be really pretty. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday, and Christmas in July is coming, so that will be a lot of fun. I will see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye for now.